Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. They're the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 16th, 2021. Round of the Deportes. Bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton is tough for everybody down here in the South. Today is Fat Tuesday in New Orleans, but the town is shut down. Nobody can go there and get down. And then I'm sitting here at home watching snow flurries all this morning. Charlton, it finally went away.
Yep.
But it's freezing around here. It's below 30 down here nowadays. Charlton, but once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. You're always keeping everybody warm.
Always keeping everybody warm. Also, something that will keep you warm on today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers. Home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, pausing is really good. In fact, I think it's helping me lose weight, Big C, but I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, it's a very important thing that everybody thinks about our great veterans across this country, and especially during this cold grip that's going through the southeastern part of the United States. Check on the veterans. Make sure that they're secure. We lose over 24 a day to suicide in this country, Charlton. And during these harsh times that we're going through, it makes it much more frustrating for those veterans to even survive when we think about the mental and financial and physical suffering that many of them go through, Charlton. Harsh times like this make it even more mentally devastating on them. So, you know, we give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, because of our concern about the great veterans that we have in this country. Everyone is distracted with COVID-19 and other problems that go on in the United States. But think about our great veterans who have sacrificed so much over the decades to allow us to have the opportunity to be able to care and figure out the problems that we have. Let's help these great veterans with the problems that they've been going through in this country, Charlton, and find a way to stop this veteran suicide that is a pandemic.
Especially when you're warm and they're outside freezing after fighting for this country. I love doing our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 if you're online. Simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely help our veterans get some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the Home Run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage on the wholesale side. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and just do it now. Say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Big C, I was telling you sometimes how in California, I'm kind of confused with the seasons in California. Not only did Trump declare war on the Republicans, the guys that voted for him, now he declared war on them. It's about 70 degrees in California, and I think it's still wintertime, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we're nowhere near 70 around here, Charlton. We've had a deluge of rain for the past couple of days. Now we have temperatures in the 20s and even had snow today.
Yeah, it's amazing. I hope that people can do their part and just staying warm or staying cool. I mean, out here in California, people still running the fireplace to keep warm, and then same thing back in the South. But a lot of you guys are having some issues. I know down in Texas, they were saying the weather's pretty bad in parts of Texas. Also along the Carolinas, it's all fair and love and war, but I hope that people can stay safe. You know, Big C, in the world of sports, I know the NBA 2021 All-Star Game is also in the South. I mean, you guys get everything in the South. You have the National Championship game, that was played down south. You have the NFL Super Bowl, that was played down south. You had the NBA basketball finals, that was actually played down south. And now the All-Star game down south, something about the South. But Keisha Lance Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, she's telling fans, please don't come to our party and try to party because they still want to make sure people stay safe for the COVID. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it's a game. I mean, you still don't have fans in stadiums anywhere around the country. And having an all-star game, I think it's kind of futile and careless, as far as the NBA goes, Charlton. You should be giving the players rest instead of forcing them into an event that had become a festive event over the past decades. And now it's just a mere basketball game. I think the NBA should just cancel it.
Yeah, I mean, smart people would cancel things. In fact, I was just talking to you over the course of the Super Bowl, how Santa Clara County, home of the 49ers, they canceled having fans in their stands. And that's a lot more people that can go into Levi Stadium than that can go into the arena down in Atlanta. So I would maybe, we talked about what's more important, health or money. And I know Adam Silver is probably not going to cancel this game because whatever money they're trying to make up, they're trying to do it. But no one can ever say that they're putting the health of the players before the health of the bank accounts if they don't cancel this game, like they've done so many other things. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the game is not going to make any money, Charlton, because you're going to lose all the festivities that surround the All-Star event. That's what the All-Star is. Not a game, it's an event. The event aspect of it won't go on. So it's really meaningless to have the game. Yeah,
it really is. And so somebody said, well, why would they cancel an All-Star game? You pay, you got to go and play. You get paid, don't you? Well, they canceled a lot of things. San Antonio Spurs, they had 4 players test positive for COVID-19. They're going to miss 3 games. So imagine what the NBA does not want. Or maybe they do want it, Big C. They don't want players coming in from different cities, bringing in whatever they've been exposed to from different cities, Big C, and then coming into the city of Atlanta, and then they're going to be in a bubble. They're not going to be there 2 weeks before the All-Star game starts, Big C, like they were doing down when they were in the bubble in Orlando, Florida. They're going to fly in maybe a couple of days before the All-Star game. Who knows if they're going to go through the screening, etc. But it's just too much to put people through. And then after playing a game, people have false positives, Big C. Then they're going to fly out and go all over the United States, except for Canada, because they're smarter in Canada than they are in the United States. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the NBA as well as the NHL is suffering through this problem right now, Charlton. Many positive tests amongst their players. Right now, this week, there are 3 teams in the NBA that are canceling games because they have players with positive tests, and they don't have enough players to play, Charlton. And plus, they don't want to take the chance of infecting the other team. So the NBA is suffering right now because they don't have a bubble. And this problem is only going to get worse as the season goes on for the NBA and the NHL, with more and more players testing positive.
Yeah, it's a shame. Maybe, I know that Adam Silver is a wise man, but maybe he's not. But I can guarantee you one thing. For any of the coaches, for any of the media, if they have them there, they're going to have those people away from the players that come in from multiple cities, but they're willing to put players, and again, they may put this on pause. I think that's the right thing to do from a medical perspective, Big C. Ironically, I don't know how far Atlanta is from Tampa, but I'm just going to say it's about 700 miles. But you know they have those parties after the Super Bowl, and who knows what's going to happen with the spike down there. But if you're spiking in NBA cities and NBA teams like the San Antonio Spurs, I'm sure the Spurs follow every protocol that you can to be safe from COVID. And now just imagine taking all the teams from the East, all the teams from the West, and they all meet down in Atlanta, Georgia for a couple of days and then fly back and hope that they're doing a much better job of keeping teams safe than San Antonio Spurs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, the All-Star Weekend is about an event, Charles.
Yeah.
It's not about a game. The game is the last thing that occurs during the event. It's just like Mardi Gras going on in New Orleans. If you're not going to have all the festivities, why put on the game? You have no three-point contest. You have no dunk contest. You have no fan experience going on, Charleston.
Yeah.
So all of the things that makes the All-Star event great are gone now. So it's just another game being played, and it's really never a game. It's just an exhibition that the players go out there and do a shoot-around.
Yeah, it's just a shoot-around. So hopefully the NBA will just realize that 2020, the reason supposedly that COVID is I guess diminishing in some places is because they've done a lot of social distancing. Even down in Australia where they did everything right, and they eventually let fans back into the arenas, and then they told fans you got to leave because the spike came. And hopefully the NBA, if they really care about the players, the season's more important than the All-Star game. And like you mentioned, Big C, there's no festivities. You don't have people down there walking around and doing what they got to do. So hopefully they'll open up and see the light for that. Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving will sit out for the Phoenix Suns game. The Brooklyn Nets playing at Phoenix, but they had a nice game up in Northern California, Sacramento, and he's going to sit out. There's some fear that maybe he was just afraid of the defense about to put on him by Chris Paul. I don't know if that's true or not. Big C thoughts?
Well, I mean, Kyrie Irving's missed about 10 games already this year, Charleston. I mean, when you hear about NBA players missing games, what is it? I mean, we haven't gotten to the playoffs yet.
Yeah.
They're going to miss games throughout the season. It's almost meaningless.
Yeah, it's almost meaningless. Big C, I hope that, again, the All-Star game, I would say the majority are going to be African-American athletes. About 80% of the NBA is African-American. And there's just no need to put people in an environment where they don't have a lot of control over what happens to their health. There's a player for the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum, saying he's still dealing with some breathing issues. And people were saying, he looks a little bit sluggish lately. But he dealt with the COVID also, and he's still affecting him. And I wouldn't think the NBA would be that obtuse to say, so what? I just hope they wouldn't do that. I want to bring up some thoughts about Black History Month. It is Black History Month. And ironically, why would Donald Trump use Black History Month to say that he's going to start war against the Republicans? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the KKK starts a war against everybody.
Yeah, they really do. They just do it without sheets. It's all fair and level war. But in my opinion, I think there's when you think about calling slavery America's original sin, that's just a thought. Let's call America's slavery what it was. It was one of the most unforgivable crimes against humanity. And that the people who settled the land that became our nation's committed, Big C, they committed that. It was a crime that took myriads of stands against black and white abolitionists. A lot of people fought against it, Big C, for decades. And there's a crisis that even led up to the Civil War. And the Civil War tried to destroy it, but it still carried on in the hearts of a lot of people. You think about it, that it was a crime that contributed over time to other crimes and forms of injustice. We hear racism's always talked about, especially in political season, but it's also led to racial prejudice. It led to thousands of lynchings, Big C, exclusion, and segregation. It's that discrimination has too many forms of inequality to name. And I want to finish with this thought because I know a lot of people just want to play sports. But you think about many of those crimes and forms of injustice and inequality, they're still with us in 2021. And only we together, all of us, all races, all creeds and colors, can do anything to stop it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, they need people to join in with black people trying to abolish those things. Black people have never stood for racial inequality in America. They fought against it ever since they were brought to this land, Charleston, seeking out their niche. And they're still trying to seek it out in 2021. But as we talked about yesterday, you still have politicians doing as much racial injustice as they can in state houses
Yeah.
to abolish the black vote, Charlton, and make it more and more difficult for black people to vote.
Yeah.
You think about the states that Donald Trump challenged as far as voting irregularities. Those are all states, Charlton, with a huge black population and black voting districts. Those are the only people he challenged. He said, as long as you're white, you're okay. But if you're a black person going out there to vote, we don't want you to vote. The Constitution was not set up for black people to have a vote. As it says, one person, one vote. Black people were not a person, Charlton. They're still not a person in the Constitution. They're 2/3 of a person in
Yeah.
the Constitution.
Yeah.
So it does not clarify black people, one person, one vote. So white people will always fight against that, Charlton, as long as they're in power. So black people have to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. If they do nothing else, go out and vote. That is the only way that we're going to ever get a toehold in this society. After President Obama was elected, you know, in his second term, Charlton, people didn't come out and vote for the next term.
Yeah.
They didn't go out and vote in the midterm, Charlton. They lost the Senate.
Yeah.
So this is what minority people have to do is vote. And that is the number one thing that white people fear in America is that if minorities go out and vote, they lose control of everything. It even makes it tough on their dollars.
Yeah. You know, the church also had a role in slavery, and that's, people say, let's pray, let's atone and come together. But the church also had, the Catholic Church had a big toll in what happened in slavery, Big C. People just don't think about it that way. That's why I've always said the Pope has to be involved. A lot of people got to be involved. It's taken so long for institutional church and many non-black Catholics to embrace the rally cry of Black Lives Matter. And it cannot be ignored. It must be said that, too, the recent statements on racism and protests that fall way short when it comes to acknowledging the church's role in the contemporary crisis and their complicity in the sin of anti-blackism, Big C, slavery and segregation in the modern era. It's not something that's new. It's going to take more than just people marching in the street. From Africa to Europe and America, Big C, it's always taken people who had a good heart to treat people fair. And I've always believed we need the church involved as much as we do any type of government, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it comes down to the politicians. The church is like society. It's what's out there. But it's the people who make the laws. The church does not make the laws. People are going to have different religious beliefs all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's those people who masticate the laws in Washington, D.C. The Catholic Church is not run by the Senate. The Senate is what the holy grail is in America as far as allowing equality in this country.
Yeah.
And Mitch McConnell has said it ever since he's been in the Senate. This is something that he's not for, as well as many senators, Charlton, who obstruct everything that would create equality in America. So we can look at all the outside entities, but until those 50 white men and women in the Senate in Washington, D.C. that call themselves Republicans think that all Americans are equal, we're always going to have a problem in this country.
Yeah, that's been a problem for a long time. Even going back to the 15th century, the Catholic Church became the first global institution to declare Black lives didn't matter. They benefited and profited from the transatlantic slave trade. It's a lot deeper than a lot of people who just want to shut up and dribble. But for Black History Month, I really hope that more people will realize that we have to all be a solution to say that all lives matter and to treat people fair. At least that's what I hope, Big C. But it takes time and it takes dialogue, and I love being a part of that dialogue with Big C Sports. I also want to touch on some things. When we talk about the great athletes throughout the world, throughout history, most sports shows, they're only going to talk to you about great black athletes. They don't talk to you about how all of this buildup of white wealth came from slavery, Big C, and free labor that was never paid out, and it was passed on from generation to generation. Not just the money and the land, but also the thinking of it. And that complex that we still do with today, where senators and congressmen are trying to overthrow the vote of mostly black people. I want to just make people, should we not just talking about some great athlete, because that's so important too. At the same time, I will mention, if the NFL, you think about this, when they deal with one of the great athletes, how a 6-year deal could be a compromise for the Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. And here's how it would work, in my opinion, if you just hear me out, Big C. The Cowboys offered Prescott a $50 million signing bonus last year. And based on the COVID-19 pandemic, who wouldn't take $50 million? But let's keep that same so that the cost of $10 million against the cap from 2021 to 2025. because bonuses can be prorated for only 5 years. I'm gonna get your thoughts on that. I want to bring up some salaries to see if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, I mean, the sticking point with Dallas is that they've never shown favoritism that they want to give Dak a long-term deal. Jerry Jones does not want a black quarterback holding him hostage. That's how he felt last year. But I think he got a touch of reality once Dak Prescott got hurt. Dak Prescott was on a record pace year to throw for potentially 6,000 yards.
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys, after Dak Prescott went down, were a very poultry team. They went through damn near half dozen quarterbacks.
Yeah, they did.
And none of them threw for one game like Dak Prescott had thrown in his first 4 games of the season, Charles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very imperative that you put the guy in place. When you look at the numbers that quarterbacks are getting around in the NFL, Dak was only asking to be compensated in that line. In Jerry's mind, Dak Prescott was a 4th-round quarterback, and he wants to pay him like a 4th-round quarterback. Dak has the numbers of a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Think about this. He never had a problem paying Tony Romo, and he's a damn free agent. Nobody drafted him.
Yeah. Well, that deals with a lot of things. We talk about the institution of the slavery, and the mindset's still there, even though slavery's been abolished. But I want to bring this up because some people say, how do you argue over $50 million and somebody not wanting to have you as a quarterback? Think about base salaries. 2021, $20 million fully guaranteed. 2022, $20 million fully guaranteed. 2023, $32.5 million and $25 million fully guaranteed. Go to 2024, $32.5 million. 2025, $32.5 million. And then 2026, $32.5 million, Big C. That's 6 years. So about $220 million for an average of $36.7 million a year. So in reality, and when you think about these numbers, they're nothing compared to Patrick Mahomes, but in reality, it's a 4-year deal worth $155 million for an average of about $38,750,000 with $115 million fully guaranteed at signing, and he would make $90 million over the first 2 years of the deal, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, those are good numbers, but does Jerry Jones have the heart to give that to a black man? That's the true question that everybody asks. I think that Dallas is going to sign Dak Prescott one way or another. They're either going to franchise him and trade him, or they'll sign him to this deal that you're talking about, 6 years. They could franchise and trade him to Houston, but all of a sudden they eat Deshaun Watson's contract, which is the same type of numbers. And I don't know, like I said, if Jerry Jones is willing to give all this money to a black man, he would rather just rebuild first.
You know, and people will not really talk about that, but it's true. Because he's had, when you look at where he came from and what he's done and compare that with Tony Romo for the time that he's been there, he didn't have a hard time doing what Tony Romo needed, but he won't do it for a guy that's outperforming him. And all you got to do is look at the numbers. It's all fair in love and war. But I want to bring up something, too, that's important. Kind of touch my mind and touch my spirit today, Big C. We always talk about rising and shining. The 5-year-old girl, recall back before the Super Bowl, the 5-year-old girl in Kansas City who was hospitalized with brain injuries after she was hurt in a car accident involving former Kansas City Chiefs coach Britt Reed. And she woke up from her coma, Big C, yesterday. Her aunt announced that her name is Ariel Young, hospitalized and in critical condition for bleeding and swelling in her brain. And earlier this month that happened, right before the Super Bowl, Big C, and remained unconscious for more than a week. Her aunt shared on a GoFundMe page set up to help with medical bills, and that the young girl is awake. Thank God for that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charleston, I mean, it's a marvel. Little children have such a resilience. And you thank the medical profession also, Charleston, because they induce comas on little children because it's a better way for them to survive.
Yeah.
It allows the brain to rejuvenate itself when you have a young child that has suffered such injuries, Charleston. But they induced her into a coma to save her life, and now she's back awake.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that sees a little kid, your heart goes out. I mean, adults go through their own things too, but young people have a special place in my heart for young. With more specific details about her condition not yet known. Ariel's 4-year-old cousin Juliana reportedly suffered a concussion also, and a broken nose in the crash too. Now Reed, the team's former outside linebackers coach, Big C, and the son of head coach Andy Reid. This is what bothers me, because we I mean, everybody knows you don't drink and drive. I'm not saying anybody's perfect, but at what point in time do we all get it? I'm not holding him any more accountable than anybody else that does that, Big C. But he admitted to the police that he had 2 or 3 drinks along with his prescription Adderall before he drove his truck and crashed into the cars that were stopped on the side of the highway in Missouri. And that was right before the Super Bowl, Big C. He did not attend Super Bowl 55 with the Chiefs. But I've said to you when this first happened and we started talking about it, if that were Joe Blow would be in jail, and they may not have let him out on bail. And I don't know what's going to happen. If there's going to be a trial, whatever's going to happen, I think they're going to fight like mad to keep him from doing any time. They'll have him do some community service because the name Reed is too big in Missouri to have his son do what the average person would do. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it didn't have to be Joe Blow. It all had to do is be a black man who has been drinking and driving. He's still in jail. I mean, here's Brett Reed admitted. He said he had 2 or 3. He probably lost count of how many consumptions of alcohol that he had that night in the bar, Charlton, and also making it a cocktail, taking Adderall, a prescription drug to go along with it. People know, and I'm going to guarantee you that on that prescription bottle it says does not consume alcohol when taking.
Of course.
So this is a guy who's done that before, Charlton. But why in the hell are you out in a bar in a snowstorm anyway, and then going to get in your vehicle and drive, and you not see the 2 cars parked on the side of the road, Charlton? Right off the back, that's reckless endangerment and driving while intoxicated. You go to jail. I don't give a damn who you are. You go to jail.
Well, I don't think it's going to do any jail time. It's a shame, but it's been so quiet in the news. There's been more concern about the Chiefs losing the Super Bowl than what happened. But it's going to come out in the light. We'll see what happens. I do want to ask you some more NFL news. The Miami Dolphins, they signed the kicker Jason Sanders. But before I even do that, because it bugs me so much, it goes back to when he told the officer I had 2 or 3 drinks. He didn't know if it was 2. He didn't know if it was 3. So he had 2 or 3. He could have called Uber or anything. I know there's still people drink and drive every day. But the Miami Dolphins signed the kicker Jason Sanders to a 5-year extension that ties him to the franchise through 2026 season. Now, financial terms, they're not disclosed yet, but a source tells that the contract is worth about $22 million, includes a $10 million guarantee. Now, Sanders finished second in the NFL with 36 made field goals in 2020, missing only 3 attempts, Big C. He had a conversion rate of 92.3%. He was 8 of 9 on attempts from 50 yards or longer. And why will the Dolphins be in the playoffs next year? He also converted all of his 36 of his point after touchdown attempts, and that was first team All-Pro selection. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Charlton, I remember back in the day when we used to laugh at the kickers because during training camp, they'd be laying over under some shade tree or under the stand, or laying out trying to tan. But now when you look at the numbers that these kickers get in their contracts, Charlton, they get more than the players got back in the day when I was playing.
That's true. And imagine, the guy did not miss any PATs, okay? The Dolphins were so close to being in the playoffs for the first time in many, many moons. And I think, maybe the Chargers could have gotten to him first, Big C. They missed the playoffs because they had a guy that cost them 4 games, all because the field goals were missed, Big C.
Everything good happens in the South, Charlton.
Hey, wait, maybe they have the right kind of libation to help people relax before they kick a field goal. Washington football team, they hired Chris Pauly and Big C on Monday, adding another experienced voice to his revamped front office. Now, he's a third former general manager Washington has added this offseason. That's a team that's making the right strides. Going to serve as the director of pro personnel, and he actually played a similar role when he was with Jacksonville from 2013 to 2019. He was out of the NFL last season, though, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but Charlton, this is another one of those nepotism roles. When you think about nepotism and getting an opportunity again, here's a guy who was out of football.
All right, Big C, we're having a little bit of static with the lines. I know the weather was bad, but go right ahead, sir.
No, he was out of football last year, Charlton, but this is a sign of nepotism. His dad was the architect of the Buffalo Bills when they had their 4 Super Bowl run, and then Indianapolis Colts when they had their 2 Super Bowl run. So, he gets a job based on what his dad's success was. But you see the lack of success he had in Jacksonville, he's getting a job. You're going to tell me that you cannot interview black candidates for these jobs, Charlton, and especially in a city like Washington, D.C., give them an opportunity.
Yeah, you would think that'd be the case, but nepotism and cronyism is alive and kicking, Big C. Just like we talked about the things, slavery, there's still a lot of things that come in hand, and people still feel that they don't have to go through the regular protocol. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, I want to talk more about some things happening in the NFL, and like the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world. And I really do appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. I want to run back to the NFL, Big C. We know nepotism, cronyism, it's all there. But the NFL, by playing with the winning team this year, would you believe that LaShawn McCoy joined a rare list of players who won 2 Super Bowls in a row by beating the team they once played for? Only 3 other players have gone that route to earn Super Bowl rings. And amazingly, Tom Brady has actually been involved in each situation. It was Brandon Browner, Super Bowl, I guess they played against the Seahawks, and they won the following one. The Patriots, who also beat the Seahawks 28-24. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, to be in that rarefied air, Charlton, to win back-to-back Super Bowls with opposite teams, and only 4 players now have accomplished that feat. It's a historical feat, Charlton. And like you said, Brady's been involved in all 4 of those players accomplishing those feats.
Yeah, he has. Chris Long, Big C, won the Super Bowl with the Patriots, won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, who also beat the Patriots 41-33, Big C, your thoughts?
Long, had a storied career with the Rams and went on to the Patriots, won a Super Bowl the following year. He wins a Super Bowl with the Eagles.
Yep, that's a lot of things that happen when you're good and you get traded from team to team. That's why people shouldn't worry about if someone's going to end up with a different team for the 2021 season. Sometimes it's a good thing. LeGarrette Blount, Big C, he won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, and then also with the Eagles, who beat the Patriots 41-33, Big C. LaShawn McCoy, I'm telling you, there's something about this. Won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, and then won a Super Bowl 55 with the Buccaneers, who actually beat, I think, a team called the Kansas City Chiefs. Big C, your thoughts?
You get a chance to play against a lot of your old friends and teammates, Charlton, the following year, and only one of you going to come out of there smiling, and McCoy was the benefactor of that this year.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Super Bowl. There's so many players that scored for not the Patriots, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that were not even on the team last year. You look at the kicker, and then you have the touchdown by Fournette, and then Brady throwing touchdown to his friend Gronk. There was all this. I remember having some issues with our phone line, but there's a great commercial. It had to do with T-Mobile, and they had Tom Brady and Gronk, Big C, and I guess one of them had called the other, and Gronk was telling him about some good news about some things that are going to happen, and Brady didn't understand what he was saying, but he was saying, you're going to go to Tampa and play in Tampa. I'm going to join you, and we're going to win a Super Bowl. And that's what he stood because the phone line was so messed up, kind of like ours right now today. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you get that opportunity so few times in life, especially in professional football.
Yep.
And all the touchdowns that you said were scored by players who were not with Tampa last year. Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski and Leonard Fournette. They all came in via free agency or trade acquisition, Charlton, to be a part of that championship run. Yeah,
it's amazing. So don't be afraid when you change relationships. Don't be afraid when you change jobs. And don't be afraid when you change teams. Sometimes it just means you're going to win. It's all fair and love and war. And speaking of winning, I want to go to the line down under. Big C, there's a lot of good tennis going on in the line down under in Australia for the great Serena Williams. Naomi Osaka, Big C, nothing but respect to these wonderful women and the desire to win. Is Black History Month. I don't know if they celebrate Black History Month in Australia, but either way, we do here in the United States. Serena, And Naomi Osaka, Big C, will meet in the Australian Open. The finals, the finals on Thursday, Big C. It's amazing because you have Serena's been doing her thing for 2 decades. Naomi's new to the business. But it's amazing to see 2 young women of color that are going to travel really to the land down under to do their thing. Both players are eager to play for another major title. Williams has been seeking her record-tying 24th, Big C, 24th since coming back after giving birth. She's had a baby, and she's still doing her thing. In 2018, has played in 4 finals since, including against Osaka in 2018. But she has struggled somewhat with expectations in the bigger moments. Osaka's won 3 majors in her short career, including 2020 U.S. Open in September, Big C. Think about this. She's regained her form after a slightly challenging stretch after her first 2 Grand Slam victories, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's outstanding that these women get an opportunity to meet again. It's going to be the semifinals tomorrow down under in Australia. Basically, it's going on now, Charleston. Well, it's going on in a few hours with the time difference. But to have these 2 great women meet up again, the last time they met head-to-head was in the finals of the U.S. Open, which Osaka came out on front. And she stopped that run of Serena trying to reach her 24th championship. But it's memorable. You know, you're talking about the old guard and the new guard in the tennis world, Charleston, of minority women dominating the game.
Yeah, and for people that may not understand about the Aborigines, how they were treated in Australia, just like the African Americans were treated in the United States, there's a lot of history all over the world. And for them to go to Australia and get treated with, love and respect, not by everybody, but the country's embraced them. Basically, I really appreciate it. If she wins, it's going to be her 4th and the 3rd most on the tour among active players, trailing Williams and Serena's sister Venus. It would be actually something that would cement her status, in my opinion, as the sports heir apparent. But Williams not ready to hand over her crown yet, Big C. If you think about this, she has a queen necklace that she's been wearing in Melbourne as she's been in her vintage form. What I'm learning about the new athlete today, the new athletes are not only in their 20s, Big C, sometimes they're in their 40s, but whatever they're drinking or eating has them playing like they're in their 20s, Big C. Your thoughts?
They have a better workout regimen today than what they had 30 and 40 years ago. When you think about professional athletes, the great ones travel with their own personal trainer, their own personal dietitian, Charleston, because their body is their business, and they make sure they take care of that. The one concern I have about Serena in this match, Charleston, is that she swept through her first 3 rounds in straight set wins. She had to battle in her last match last night, Charleston, to get to this point of the semifinals against Naomi Osaka. It took her 4 matches to get there, Charleston, so I'm wondering if she might be a little leg weary going into the semifinal match.
Yeah, well, we never know. I'm sure she'll find her groove. She'll get her mojo on. Whatever Gatorade they're drinking, I'm sure it's going to, but you never know. It could go either way because these young players, they grew up just like a football team. They may study their opponent. These tennis players, they've had the chance to see the Williams sisters when they were probably in the crib, in the cradle, Big C. They were watching them as their parents gave them the bottle to sip, the milk or whatever they gave them. And they were watching Serena and Venus play when they were just, before they could probably even walk. And so they've learned to emulate these champions of tennis. And you never know who's going to win. I just hope that we see good tennis, and I'm sure we will be. On the male side of the tennis universe, Big C, Aslan Krastev never had managed to make it into the main draw of the Grand Slam tournament. Now he just refuses to leave the Australian Open. A 27-year-old Russian qualifier who's ranked 114th, think about this, Big C, became the first man in the professional era to reach the semifinals of his first major tennis tournament by beating 18th-seeded Gregory Dimitrov 2-6, 6-4, 6-1, and 6-2 on Tuesday. It's an unbelievable feeling, he said. Of course, it's first time in main draw, first time in semis. It's actually an incredible experience for him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about coming in 114th in the world, Charleston, people expect you to make an early outfit, but this young man has had perseverance, and we've seen a lot of that down under Charleston with the players on the men and women's side. First time making it to the finals, the quarterfinals, the semifinals. This is excellent for tennis to know that you have a new tier of players coming along.
Yeah, not so fast, my friend. Up next for Khrushchev, Big C, is the #1 ranked 8-time champion Novak Djokovic. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, you talk about running into a buzzsaw. Djokovic got it going last night, Johnson,
Yeah.
when he had to come from behind and smoke his opponent.
Yeah, and he really did smoke him, if that makes sense. Man, 8-time champion is doing his thing. I just wish everybody nothing but the best. So many athletes playing through COVID and going through all the protocol, and they're coming out on top. I think it's something we can all learn by. Even listening to Jason Tatum for the Boston Celtics, and then other players that are hit with COVID down. And, you know, if you look at Rudy Gobert, I think he was the first NBA player announced with COVID. And you look at his roommate, his teammate, Donovan Mitchell, I think they were the first two. And now the Utah Jazz, they're on top of the NBA universe, at least for now. Who knows how it's going to happen after the All-Star break, Big C. But Utah's doing their thing, and both of those guys came out of COVID. Big C, what does that say about the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and the ability to fight on no matter what, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charleston, I don't know if it really speaks to what COVID has done to people, because you can't judge athletes like you judge regular society, Charleston. They have the best of medical care, so athletes have a different advantage than everybody else.
Yeah, well, maybe we can all start living and eating the way they do, and we can have some of that advantage. It's always fair and loving war. It is a clue, though, Big C, a very good clue. I want to go to the world of college women's baseball, where oftentimes you'll find the best baseball for the women and the men is played on the West Coast. Congratulations, 2020 World Series champion, Los Angeles Dodgers, Big C. But think about this. Oklahoma smashed an NCAA record, Big C, 13 home runs to open its 2021 softball season with a 29-0 win against UTEP. No, it's not football season. I know you're missing football, Big C. But this was a softball score, 29-0 against UTEP. Really want to offer UTEP some defensive lessons and how to pitch better. Grace Lyons and Tahira Jennings both homered 3 times, while Mackenzie Henson had 2, Nicole Mendez had 2, Joycelyn Olo had, and then Jada Coleman, as well as Mackenzie Dehanu, rounded out the record-breaking game. 29-0, Big C. It ended just 5 innings after the minor invitational, Big C. Your thoughts?
They know better, Charleston. At first, I would have thought they were playing against the West Coast team and they were playing football.
Hey, we'll accept Oklahoma as a West Coast team, putting 29 points on it. Kind of like what Oregon's going to do when they play Georgia in the kickoff classic in 2022. Georgia's afraid to come out to Austin Stadium, but Oregon said, we'll meet you halfway. I hope there's no premonition. I don't think a duck could beat a bulldog in a real fight, but this is a football game coming up. Your thoughts?
I mean, you got to look at Oregon and the Pac-10, Pac-12 records when they go out to Texas and play football.
No, this time they're bringing their own officials, if that makes sense to you. They're not going to get it at the second time. But back to baseball, what Oklahoma did to UTEP. That's not nice to do that to somebody, 29-0. But the previous single-game home run record was 10, shared by BYU, also out of the West. And again, it was a 2008, and then University of Texas San Antonio in 2004. Oklahoma, which was ranked number 4 nationally to open the season, wasted no time putting the game out of reach with 13 runs in the top of the first inning. And I wonder at what time, do they throw in the towel in baseball, Big C? Your thoughts?
And it looks like their football team is out there playing baseball, Charleston.
Yeah.
So we know everybody in Oklahoma can score in the 20s at least.
Yeah, and no insult to the ladies to say that some of you guys look like football players, but we know people lift weights in Oklahoma. It's all fair. It's love for war, Big C. I wish the ladies nothing but the best. 29-0 is a pretty good beatdown. I want to run into college basketball's top 10, updated as of 2016, actually 2021, February 16. Big C's thoughts on some West Coast teams, and the number 1 team so far in college basketball. I don't know if they will end number 1, but the number 1 ranked team so far, Big C, is from the West Coast. They're called Gonzaga. They're out of the Spokane, Washington area, Big C. They're ranked number 1. I know the reason that I would say they'll have a hard time finishing, but maybe they will, because they look like they're on a collision course with maybe a Michigan or a Baylor. But their tougher teams really is when they play a BYU or they play a University of Pacific in Stockton or they'll play University of San Francisco, and they just put 100 points on the board against University of San Francisco. I don't know if it's going to be as easy when they get up against players that are a lot more physical. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the thing about college basketball is not like college football. It's not always about physicality. It's about scheme and athleticism. And I don't think anybody from the Pac-12 in Los Angeles know what Gonzaga is.
Yeah, they probably fly. They all probably share the airport up in Pullman, Spokane area. It's all fair and level war, but it's amazing that a small area can attract such good athletes, and they have a good winning streak. I do think if they played in the Pac-10 or the Pac-12, they would not be undefeated, or in the Big Ten, in my opinion, too. It's all fair and level war. Number 2 is Baylor, and Baylor is itching at the bits, Big C, because they're number 2 down in the Big 12 conference, and they feel they have a lot better competition playing against the Oklahomas and the Texas of the world than they do with Gonzaga. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you look at the top 2 teams in the country, Charlton, Gonzaga's 20-0, Baylor's 17-0. I mean, being undefeated has something to say about it.
Yeah, it really does. No matter what your competition is, you have to score more points than your opponent on every night. Michigan, I go back to the Fab 5, the Michigan Wolverines, Big C. They're ranked number 3 in the country. Big Ten basketball has a lot of good programs, and I think they'll be more battle-tested than a Gonzaga going into, if we call it March Madness. Big C, your thoughts?
Juwan Howard has done a marvelous job in coming in and turning around his alma mater. He was part of that Fab 5 prior to spending 15 years in the NBA. But coming back to his alma mater, getting him national recognition all over again, Charlton, a repeat of what he had when he was in his youth.
Yeah, what he had when he was in his youth, and obviously he knows the experience of what it's like to be in a big game. Few doesn't have that out at Gonzaga. Also, Ohio State, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they're always a dominant athletic program, whether it's football or whether it's basketball. I'm sure they'll do okay in the tournament. Illinois, another team out of the Big Ten, and this is where I think it may hurt Gonzaga somewhat. You have Michigan 3, Ohio State 4, Illinois 5. In the top 5, 3 of them are out of the same conference. They got to beat each other up and get battle tested. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it all comes down to your seeding and bracketing once you get to the NCAA tournament. Rankings in college basketball are much different than what they are in football, because you'll move to different regions of the country when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, and at the same time, when you look at finishing up the top 10, Big C's thoughts for college basketball, you have the University of Houston, the Cougars. I remember back in the day they had the Phi Slamma Jamma with the Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, they had so many great basketball players at Houston over the years. They're back at the top of the mountain. Virginia, Virginia's won a national championship recently. They also were a number 1 seed that lost to a number 16 seed. I'm sure they don't want that to happen again this year. Big C, your thoughts?
Ironically, Virginia is still the defending national champs, Charlton, because there was not a championship played last year, so they're still representing that title.
I still thought that some shenanigans went on against Auburn in that game, but it's all fair and level war, just my opinion, when they got past Auburn. But you look at another program that's so used to playing in college finals and championship playoff brackets. You have a University of Alabama, and in my opinion, it's kind of upsetting that Alabama's always ranked in the top in the country in football. Now they're ranked on the top in basketball. I think it's because a lot of players are afraid to get near an elephant mascot. They have a real elephant as a mascot, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that shows the growth of the SEC, Charlton, and that Alabama athletic program. That they're not just a dominant powerhouse in football and baseball, but the basketball program is coming along also.
Yeah, they're coming along also. Oklahoma coming in at number 9, and then followed by Villanova. Villanova, I remember when they upset Georgetown back in Raleigh, Massameto, the late John Thompson. Villanova's coming in at number 10. So far, that's up to the minute, but I still feel that the team that wins the national championship, I would love it to be Gonzaga just because they're out on the West Coast, but I wouldn't be looking too far past an Oregon program that may come out of the Pac-12. And then UCLA's not a bad program either. It'd be nice to see someone from the West Coast get the benefit of the doubt from these officials, Big C.
Well, the thing about those lower-ranking West Coast programs, Charlton, they got to move across the country in their bracketing, and they're most likely going to be facing one of these teams that are in the top 10.
Yeah, well, they all sound a little bit ready, taller on the radio. I'm sure the Pac-12 will make some noise this year in the March Madness. I want to jump, when you talk about making some noise, I want to run to the NBA, Big C, when you think about it, even without Joel Embiid. The Philadelphia 76ers, they were scoring every time down the court. But the Utah Jazz did not blink an eye. Snyder has his boys planned. They just gave the ball back to Jordan Clarkson. Clarkson dropped his season high. He had 40 points off the bench to send the streaking Jazz past Philadelphia 134-123. It was a matchup of conference leaders Monday night, basically, despite the career best 42 points from Ben Simmons was doing his thing. Never played with anyone like JC in his lifetime, he said. Teammate Joe Ingles said. It's pretty cool to play with someone that's so locked into what his role is and so comfortable in the role coming off the bench. Utah 23-5. Big C, they've won 8 straight games. In 19 of the last 20, Clarkson's been a spark plug in several of those victories. And last I checked, they are a West Coast program. Big C, your thoughts?
Best program right now on the West Coast when you're talking about basketball, Charlton.
Yeah.
You're going to ask those teams in California what's going on with that Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what's going on with the Rocky Mountain High. But Utah's doing their things. Chris Snyder's doing his thing. They've always been well coached. I don't think they're going to end up as the top seed coming out of the West, but we'll see. Depends on what happens with the Lakers. If Davis is going to be okay, but you still have the Clippers are going to be a very solid team. Wouldn't look too far down the road. You know, Denver's going to make some noise. Portland, if they can stay healthy, going to make some noise. Really want to see what happens with the Lakers because outside of those, it's kind of tough to decide who's going to come out of the West. In the East, I really like the New Jersey Nets if they get everybody healthy, Big C. Boston can't look past them. There's a lot of people that say Milwaukee, but Milwaukee, every year they disappoint people. They don't even get to the finals. I don't know if this is the year for them. But you look at this happening in the world of basketball, no one really thought that Utah would be on the top of the mountain, Big C. Your thoughts?
I don't know if that's the case or not, Charlton. This is a team that's been coming together more and more. When you think about the players that they have in, to have a team that's not selfish, Charlton, that's the key of it. I mean, people get so enamored with the highlight players that you see on the newsreels all the time, and forget about those players who are out there playing fundamental basketball like Quinn Snyder has that team up in Utah playing.
Yeah,
and you know, when they made that off-season acquisition and brought in Oladipo, Charlton, it made a change in the quest of that organization.
Yeah, it's all fair in love and war. We'll see what happens when they get down the back nine in the playoff in a golf metaphor, Big C. On the back nine, I think they'll fade somewhat. It's always like a runner. It's not good to go start to finish in the top seed, and that's what happened to Milwaukee. Oftentimes they get knocked out when they get up against tougher teams. I want to ask you a thought about a player that I have a lot of respect for. Nobody can say if somebody says the right thing or not, but I know he kicked LeBron James, and he got thrown out of the game after the game was over. They didn't throw him out when the Warriors were playing Cleveland, and the Cleveland came back and won that series, Big C, in the Game 7. But Draymond's always been, I guess you would say he plays with his heart on his sleeve or his emotion on his sleeve, out of Michigan State. But Golden State Warriors forward, Draymond Green, devoted almost the entirety of his post-game news conference on Monday night, and he was calling out the NBA's treatment of its players. And he cited various examples, some double standards around the league. But before I get your thoughts on that, isn't it always a double standard when you don't write the paycheck for the team? The guys that write the paycheck, they can call a double standard, but a player who's getting the paycheck can't call it a double standard. Big C, your thoughts?
Not the guys writing the paychecks that's called it a double standard, Charlton. It's the guys writing the print that makes it a double standard. I mean, you don't hear owners in the NBA come out criticizing players, making statements. It's always the media coming out making those statements, Charlton, and the media has that blasphemy for certain minorities players. I haven't heard a white player be blasted by the NBA media, Charlton, in a long, long time. Matter of fact, decades. But the black players are always criticized because they want equal rights just like we want in society.
Yeah. Well, he said he wanted to talk about some things that really bothered him after the Warriors had a 129-98 win. Maybe people thought he was going to talk about the fouls, how the games were officiated. He said that the treatment of the players in the league, to watch Andre Drummond before the game sit on the sidelines and then go back and come out in street clothes because a team is going to trade him, he didn't like that, Big C. But if you're a team and you're going to trade someone, wouldn't you pull him to the side so he doesn't get injured and tamper with the trade, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, think about the slave mentality of that. Is that you want your slave to look good when you put him up on the block so that you get the higher bidder for it. I mean, you criticize players for not playing, for players taking time off when they call themselves getting a rest date. or
Yeah.
they don't report to camp on time. But when you want to do something with that player, when you want to sit it down to keep up his slave trade value, Charlton, it's okay for you as an organization. But when that player says, I need the time off for me to rest, you're criticized by the media.
Yeah, but they were not paying slaves $30 million, Big C. So that's a far stretch to say of slave mentality. But I understand the point. But if the Cavs are in transitioning to a new center, Jared Allen, and believes it's unfair to Drummond to limit his minutes as the organization is transitioning to Allen, Green continued, because when James Harden asked for a trade, this is going back down to Houston and James Harden, and essentially dodged it. No one is going to fight back that James Harden was dodging his last days in Houston, okay? But that was his choice, Big C. He was castrated by some different media people because he wanted to do things differently. Everybody destroyed the man media-wise, but I disagree with what Draymond's saying in just my opinion. Everybody has, when you're the highest guy in the mountain, people are going to poke darts at you. They're going to throw darts at you. But it was also, Harden decided to sit out because he didn't want to play there anymore. I don't know how that's the media's fault, Big C. Your thoughts?
The media, look at how the media blasted him, Charlton, for not wanting to be a part of the team. Andre Drummond is wanting to be a part of the team, Charlton, and here it is. They won't allow him to play. Take the same city of Houston. Look at Deshaun Watson, who has continuously told everybody he does not want to be a part of the organization.
Yeah.
What has the organization done for him? Not a damn thing. J.J. Watt said, I don't want to be here any longer. Okay, we'll give you your unconditional release. We'll let the white guy walk free, but we're going to make the black guy stay around here and beg and toil the way we wanted to do. And then, like I said, slave mentality, Charlton, whether it's the NBA or the NFL, the owner is not going to give that black guy the latitude that he wants, but he'll freely give it to any white guy. Look at the boy Gordon Hayward back in Boston, who said he no longer wanted to be in Boston. Okay, we will release you so that you can go seek out the contract that you want to take wherever you want to go. Do they do that for any black players? No, Charlton. They forced the trade with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, but that's a point that you're...
I mean, find me an excuse that's different, Charlton, because what I just stated is factual. When you have a black player requesting a trade from an organization, Dak Prescott, let's look at him. He requested a contract from the Dallas Cowboys. No, we're not going to give you the money that you want. We're not going to give you the deal you want. Unless you sign for 5 years, we won't give it to you. We're not going to give you a 4-year contract where you have an opportunity to renegotiate again. They didn't say that to Jared Goff. They didn't say that to Carson Wentz. They gave them the 5-year contracts with the money they wanted, made them the 2 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. They were drafted in the same year that Dak Prescott was, and they had not had the career statistics that Dak Prescott had as a quarterback. So when you sit there and look at how you're treated as a white quarterback versus a black quarterback, you look at a white NBA player versus a black NBA player, Charlton, it's slave mentality. Damn the money. We know they're all making money in all those leagues. But it's how you treat the guys, just like Draymond is saying. It's a bunch of BS in how the black players get treated.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford also, they said it's a good move for his career by going elsewhere. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, I can understand the point too, but I just, to say it's a slave mentality, that's a little bit far.
It's not about the money, Charlton. We know that these professional athletes make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars. These owners make billions of dollars. But it's about the equitable treatment that Draymond was talking about. Take the money out of the equation. You cannot use the money as part of the treatment, Charlton, because they all are millionaires. They're going to make the money regardless of the team that they're with.
Yeah.
But it's how you treat them as men, Charlton, as black players continuously complain about.
Well, I mean, everybody has their own opinion about it, and maybe it is true. But
what you're saying is that they're treating the black and white players the same, is what you're saying by your statement.
No, I know how to speak. I don't mince words at all. I'm just saying that you have a lot of times where people may have a grievance and they can come out and say it. I'm not saying that the people are treated the same. I just have a hard time for a multi-millionaire man if
like I said, take the money out of the equation. It's not about the money, Charlton. They're not sitting here talking about contract negotiation. That's not the equation. What they're talking about is how you're treating a player when he no longer wants to be in an organization.
Yeah.
When you think about the Boston Celtics, Gordon Hayward walked away from his contract.
Yeah, he did.
They gave him his unconditional release, so they didn't owe him any money.
Right.
You've had black players ask the same thing. Deshaun Watson would take the same thing. Give me my unconditional release.
Yeah.
And I'll go out and negotiate my own contract again with a new organization. They won't do that for black players. That's what I'm saying. They will gladly do it for white players, for them to go out and seek the team that they want and still renegotiate a contract. Show me what black players had that done for him.
Yeah, the only umbrage I take is when they equate that to slavery, because it's not the same thing, even if you tried a million different ways to say it. But I understand, and that's great that he comes out and speaks his mind about it.
A white guy his freedom, and you won't give a black guy his freedom. Tell me how does that not equate to slavery?
No, but I think
we're not talking about the money. We're talking about the freedom. From a freedom aspect, when you will not allow the black guy to go out and negotiate on his own with another organization, but you'll give the white guy the opportunity to do that. Tell me how does that not akin to ownership?
Well, it's not slavery. I know everybody can mix
ownership.
Words. Well, either way, it's not slavery. You can change the words all you want.
Ownership.
Yeah. Well, I still change. I mean, it's just your opinion. You want to call it slavery? You want to call it ownership? I call it have dialogue. You can sit out and do something. Before I close, there's a comedian.
Isn't that what they're doing, having dialogue, saying, I want my release?
Yeah,
I don't want to be here any longer? Tell me what part of that is not dialogue.
Yeah, but it's not slavery, Big C. I hope you can see that. You may got to pause a little
ownership. Bit. Take slavery out of it.
Okay.
You own him. You own that piece of property, and you're not letting it go.
You don't own them. They can quit. Okay? Slaves couldn't quit. You cannot, in a million years, equate a multi-million-dollar athlete.
Why I took slavery out of it and said ownership.
Okay, you can't take ownership about it. You can always quit. If somebody owns you, you can't quit. These guys can quit, Big C. That's why you got to understand the difference. And so anyone can have their opinion, but it's not slavery and it's not ownership. It's a choice. They make a choice to stay. And then
if they quit that team, they don't have the freedom to go play with another team. That's ownership for that property, isn't it?
No, it's not, because you can quit. You know, Jim Brown walked away. You can't call it slavery.
But what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying carefully.
It's not. It doesn't make.
If you quit that organization and you say you want to go play for another one, what do they have to do? They have to relinquish your rights, don't they?
Yeah.
They own your rights.
No, it's not ownership.
For you to be able to perform in that business.
Big C, a person can own a dog, and the dog can say, I don't want to be in this house anymore, if the dog could talk, and the dog wouldn't have a choice. Athletes have a choice. You can't take away all their power and say they're owned by anybody, and they're definitely not slaves. So you and Draymond Green, you have your own way of looking at things, but I mean, I'm just different when it comes to that. There's a comedian by the name of Dave Chappelle, and he was on an HBO, or I guess it was not HBO, one of those programs, Netflix or something. But, you know, they were not paying him any royalties, so he quit. You know, he quit. And then, because he quit, they came back and renegotiated and gave him millions of dollars of his royalties back. Because he was not a slave. He was not owned. He just knew his rights and he exercised his power. He didn't complain. He quit, Big C. And when he quit, they came back and gave him his money because he's a smart man. And that's the difference. He's not owned. He's not a slave. He's a man. And everybody maybe in sports can learn that too. Before we close, I do appreciate what Draymond said. I appreciate what you said. But I hope, especially in Black History Month, that we as black men can get over the fact that somebody who makes $100 million is a slave to anybody, and nobody owns you. When you can walk out and quit, you're not owned. You're choosing to stay there. There's a difference, Big C, and that's just my opinion. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Looking forward to in the sports universe, Charlton, is when black athletes can have the opportunity to quit, like Brett Favre when he quit on two different organizations, the Green Bay Packers and the New York Jets, because he did not want to be with those teams any longer, and he wanted his freedom, and they granted it to him as a white man. But also I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. You're always out there looking at and taking care of everybody.
Always taking care of everybody. Know your rights. You got to know your rights. You're not a slave, and you're not owned. Every Monday through Friday, rise and shine at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. We follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south, as we always tell you. Like my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.